Hello viewer, today I will tell you a story based on real events, a story that amazed the whole world with its amazing and creepy ending. While creating this video, I could not sleep for 3 days because it had a huge impact on me. Sit back and get ready to meet your fear. And so it all began in a very unusual place, namely in a children's camp, a camp called Sosnowy Kraj. This place was located far from large cities. Surrounded by dense forest, it was famous for its solitude and fresh air. Once upon a time, this camp was a favorite vacation spot for children and teenagers. But now few people talked about it. Old-timers of the nearest village mentioned Sosnowy Kraj reluctantly, and there were practically no mentions on the internet. However, the management of the school where our heroes studied somehow decided to revive the old tradition, summer vacations in this camp. A survey was conducted in the school classroom, and only 7 teenagers out of 20 wanted to go there together with 2 teachers. These were ordinary school children, different in character, but connected by school friendship and rivalry. Among them were Masha, a quiet and withdrawn girl who loved books; Igor, a self-confident and slightly aggressive leader; Lena, dreamy, with a great interest in mysticism; Kostya, a joker who was always looking for adventure; Dasha, cautious and a little nervous; Maxim, who was interested in photography; Anton, a quiet observer who preferred not to get into trouble. The bus arrived in the evening. The gray sky was overcast, promising rain, and the sun, hiding behind the horizon, painted the forest blood red. The first thing they noticed when they drove up to the camp was the silence. Not a sound of birds, not a rustle of wind. Everything seemed frozen. At the entrance to the camp stood an arch with a peeling inscription, Pineland. The letters were worn and as if eaten away by time, but they were still legible. A faint smell of dampness and something rotten hung in the air. "Well, it looks atmospheric," Kostya chuckled when everyone got off the bus. "Atmospheric," Dasha muttered quietly, "more like a scene from an old horror movie." The teacher, a strict woman named Valentina Petrovna, quickly lined everyone up and led them to the buildings. The camp buildings looked like they hadn't been renovated in decades. The paint was peeling, the windows were cloudy, and there was that eerie silence all around. However, the inside of the buildings were in decent condition, as if someone had maintained a minimum of order. "You have the evening to get settled in," said Valentina Petrovna. "Tomorrow we'll split into groups for classes." The children went to their rooms. Maxim, who had brought a camera with him, decided to take a short walk to photograph the surroundings before it got dark. He was accompanied by Kostya and Lena, who wanted to explore the area. While walking, they noticed a strange detail. All the buildings the camps were in perfect condition okay, but one of them was fully fenced rusty mesh. At the entrance there was a sign, "Entrance prohibited." "Here is our first quest." Kostya with a challenge looked at his friends. "Maybe we shouldn't." Lena looked back at the main building, where more was burning light. "Valentina Petrovna will yell at us if we'll find out." "He won't find out," confidently Kostya stated. Maxim, carried away mysticism, did not resist. He raised the camera and made some pictures fences. Through lens, he noticed that windows' closed core tightened with dirt from the inside, but on one of them clearly imprinted children's palms. "It's definitely someone from local. I was being naughty," he said, although his voice betrayed his doubts. After Maxim noticed children's palms on the dirty glass of the closed core, the whole trinity felt strange heaviness. The words seemed to get stuck in their throats, and no one dared comment seen. First silence, Kostya broke in. His voice sounded suddenly loud in the thick silence. "Well, these are just someone's jokes, probably. The kids snuck in here before us." There was a sense of urgency in his words, uncertainty, and Maxim with Lena. This was noticed. I saw how dirty these were." "The windows?" Lena answered, trying to control the trembling in her voice. "No one has been there for years." Maxim by chance raised camera and again looked at the body through the lens. Palms it was no longer visible, but it seemed that windows more plunged deeper into the darkness, as if someone on purpose obscured light from the inside. "We need to go back," he said firmly. "It's getting dark." They moved back to the main building at a fast pace, barely speaking. The road that during the day seemed short and clear now looked like longer. With each step, the forest became all darker and denser. "Why is it so quiet?" Lena suddenly whispered, stopping. The friends froze, listening. There was no one around. Heard nothing. No birds, no rustling wind. There was silence. Absolute, as in soundproof room. "It's just night," Kostya muttered, although his voice betrayed him. was shaking, but Lena felt that this is not true. There was silence. Too wrong. She as if it was pressing on my ears, forcing me entrails shrink from the inexplicable fear. Do you feel it? She asked quietly. We feel it, Maxime answered briefly. It wasn't just a forest that surrounded me. It seemed like the space itself around changed, became alien and hostile. Someone is following us, Lena squeezed out, looking around. Maxime sharply turned around, pointing the camera into the darkness. Flash illuminated bushes and trees, but no one was visible behind them. You're just nervous, he tried. Kostya joked, but there was no trace of it in his voice. Fun. When we got to the main point buildings, they were overcome with relief, but not for long. Light in the windows was dim and trembling, as if lamps we barely managed. That's all. Looked like otherwise. Corners, buildings as if they moved, and the doors creaked like they didn't do it earlier. Maxime lingered at the threshold, throwing last look at the forest. He again raised the camera and took photo. Flash for a moment illuminated silhouette at the very line's trees. Someone's figure stood motionless, high and strange, stretched out. Maxime said nothing. To the rest, he just walked in. Inside, knowing that in this night, he definitely won't be able to fall asleep. Night fell quickly in the camp. The forest was all around, became inky a spot, but the only one source the lights remained dim lamps inside buildings. Children, they went to their rooms, however fall asleep no one could. Maxime sat on the bed, looking through pictures that managed due in the evening. One of the photos made him freeze. In the picture closed, the body, filmed through the net, was visible in the corner of the frame blurred figure. Tall, thin, with an unnatural long limbs. It's just a camera defect, he whispered, but the trembling in his voice betrayed his fear. At the same time, in the room, Kostya and Igor discussed plans for the morning. Climb into that building tomorrow, Kostya said in a whisper. Something's clearly wrong there. Are you sure? Igor was not a coward, but there was something in the atmosphere the camp made him wary. The place, is strange. Somewhere behind the walls a sound was heard. At first it was quiet, barely discernible, but soon it became distinct. There was a creak, as if someone slowly opened and closed the old door. Who's there? He shouted. Igor into the void. Answer to him. There was silence. After of this, Igor more some 10 minutes tried hear something, but unfortunately, all he heard was this quiet swaying trees from the light night winds. I couldn't for a long time close eye, because what happened, it didn't give him any chance peace. Igor. I thought about it until dawn, and only then he was able to sleep for a few hours. In the morning, everyone went to exercise, and after have breakfast. Friends gathered together and more some time waited for Masha. An hour passed. The girl still wasn't there. The guys started Chew and went to her searches, before that having warned Educator. As it turned out, not at all no one could find Masha. The bed remained untouched, and the things were folded on the chair. Valentina Petrovna decided that the girl just left, walk alone. She's probably by the river, the teacher said, although there was uncertainty in her voice. Children split into groups and started to look for Masha, but the forest turned out to be insidious. The paths seemed safe, unexpectedly led to dead ends, and soon the searches began to be accompanied ominous finds. In the grass lay a dirty hairpin from Masha, something dark. Maxime couldn't stand it and pulled it out camera to capture the scene, but when he raised lens, his heart shrank. In the depths forests, between trees, the same one flashed by again the figure he saw in the photo. There's someone there, he shouted, but no one. I didn't believe him. Maxime tried prove to the rest that he didn't lie, but unfortunately to him at all, nobody believed it because nobody wanted to raise panic and worry. When Search Masha dragged on until the evening, Valentina Petrovna seemed to be starting to lose patience. She ordered everyone to return to the main building. Here too much. It's dangerous to wander through the forest in the dark, she said sternly. In the morning, let's continue. But the children couldn't shake the feeling that adults, they are not telling you something. The tension increased when Igor suddenly I remembered one strange detail. Guys, have you noticed that there are no other children in the camp? He said quietly. A thought that had occurred to him a long time ago. Everyone froze. Well, maybe it's just a change. Time, she tried. Lena justified herself. The camp can't be just for us. And if maybe? Maxime squeezed camera in hand. Look at the cases. They old. It seems that here no one came for years." The words hung in the air like heavy veil. At night again, no one slept. The whispers behind the walls became louder, and now it seemed to be coming from the building itself. Anton, lying on the bed, tried focus on the sounds to understand where they are coming from. They are coming. But soon he heard something other. This is where light steps, as if someone barefoot walked down the corridor. He got drunk courage and looked out from rooms. The corridor was empty, but the lights were flickering, and in the air, it was felt something icy. "This total only imagination," he whispered, but then suddenly a voice rang out. "Help." Whisper was quiet, childish. Anton ran back into the room, slamming the door loudly, and closed his eyes, dreaming of waking up at home. When Boy slammed shut door his rooms, he felt that trembles to all body. It seemed that the silence outside was becoming harder, as if the darkness itself was thickening and pressing down on him. But this, it wasn't the most scary. In the corner rooms, where stood closet, he suddenly noticed shadow. A shadow that shouldn't, was B. "Who here?" Anton's voice dropped to a whisper. The shadow did not move, but its outline started change. She became more and more clear, for now from her figure did not appear, thin, with long arms touching the floor. Face she was not visible, but in the empty eye sockets was glowing something dim, like the remains of something long extinct Sveta. Anton wanted to scream, but his throat felt like squeezed invisible hand. Creature slowly approached, and he heard how it whispers, "You same you will stay." These words echo rolled around the room, as if dozens of voices were speaking in them at once. In despair, Anton rushed to the window, hoping to attract attention the rest. But I saw only darkness. The forest that during the day seemed green and alive, at night turned into an abyss. Behind the trees he made out weak movement, similar to human silhouettes figures circled around camps. "This is a dream. This is a dream," he whispered to himself. To keep from going crazy, he lit a fire table lamp and began writing in a notebook. This was his old way to cope with fears. But as soon as he wrote first words, like felt that something cold touches his shoulder. Turning around, he saw her, that very one, the figure that stood in the corner. Now she was nearby, and the face turned out to be creepy familiar. This was Masha. Only her leather was gray, and the eyes empty. "Help me." Her voice sounded simultaneously pleadingly and threateningly. Anton recoiled, closing his eyes, face with hands, and suddenly the room fell silent. When he opened eyes, figures there was no more. Only on the floor remained wet a trail leading to the door. He sat like that until the morning, clutching the notebook in his hands, not daring move. The night became the most wonderful for Anton long in his life. His mind balanced on the edge, but he survived thanks to not coming out from rooms like as if something told me what's waiting for him behind the door, something much worse. In the morning it became clear. Valentina Petrovna disappeared. The teacher who stayed with them, Nikolai Sergeyevich, led myself strange, almost indifferent. "She for sure went to the village for help," he said, avoiding meat through the eyes of children. But the guys knew this lie. Maxim suggested check closed case. "We won't know what here happens until we look there." Lena tried to dissuade the rest, but no one didn't listen to her. The whole group went to the fence. Kostya was the first, crawled through under net, raised a wooden beam that blocked entrance, and opened the old door. Inside it was dark, the air soaked rotten and musty. Faded ones were lying on the floor, toys, torn notebooks, and children's photos. Maxim picked up one of them. In the picture were boy and girl in pioneer ties. Their faces appeared to him weird familiar, but he couldn't remember where they saw. "This strange," he muttered. "These children." And then Lena screamed. On the wall, right in front of them, were written words. Something read, "We are still here." When they ran out from buildings, the sun was already beginning to sit down. The forest again fell into dead silence. But this time the children noticed something strange. The camp arch disappeared. "Where exit?" Dasha spun around on the spot. "Where's the bus?" Igor ran there where there will be a road, but instead her found only thickets. It's impossible," he shouted. "We've arrived. This in the morning." Lena started sobbing, and Kostya stood with his eyes wide open, with eyes looking towards the forest. "There's someone there," he muttered. "They are watching us." From depths forest to the camp figures were indeed approaching. At first it seemed that children, but as they got closer, it became clear that their movements unnatural. They as if they were hovering above the ground, and their faces were distorted by grimaces of horror. Maxim, that's it. More holding camera mechanically began to shoot, but when he looked at the screen, the camera showed at all other. Instead, Camp and his friends, in the pictures, was only abandoned wasteland, overgrown bush. It's impossible, he whispered. At that moment, everything fell into places. Camp the Pine Edge was closed many years ago after scary tragedy. All children and adults who were here disappeared. The camp has long since become legend that no one perceived seriously. There was no camp, and there never was.